Sidney Nolan may be most renowned for his series of works on Ned Kelly, but the artist also painted a large number of canvases about war and, in particular, the Gallipoli campaign. Sidney Nolan's Gallipoli series showcases a selection of these works commemorating the large numbers of Australians who lost their lives in that battle, including Nolan's own brother. The ABC's Art Nation took a look at the exhibition, currently on display in Geelong.
You either love Nolan or you hate him, and I think a lot of these works have turned people's views on Nolan.
I think it's really deeply moving, actually. I'm surprised. I really feel quite stunned by it.
I'm more familiar with the Ned Kelly sort of thing so I've never seen most of this work, so it's been, very powerful.
It's always really a moving thing for me to come in and see so many pictures. It's a bit like coming back to see him again.
The Gallipoli series is some works that Nolan produced that relate to the Gallipoli campaign of 1915, but they're also his own personal interpretation of the event.
The Anzac tradition started on the slopes of Gallipoli in 1915 with what John Masefield called the finest body of young men ever brought together in modern times.
The Gallipoli campaign was a loss in the end, but it was the first campaign that we took part in as a nation, and I think that's what builds this myth up and builds this legend of the Anzacs up.
In Sydney, while I'm looking at this march now, I realise perhaps for the first time what it's all about. In early years in Melbourne, I probably had the wrong idea as a younger man. But I see now that these men are marching. It's a bit like an Irish wake in a sense, the thought of death at the back of it all, that they're remembering all these things. But there's a form of defiance and a form of dignity about it.
The kind of myths that Nolan was attracted to were what you would call noble failures. So we have Ned Kelly, also Burke and Wills, that was a tragedy. Then he was also looking at Leda and the Swan. That's another tragic myth of Leda being raped by the god Zeus. Nolan was quite interested in that contradiction of, these great noble ideals mixed with these tragic failures. Nolan began the series in 1955 whilst on the island of Hydra in the Greek islands. He was really interested in looking at the Greek myths and the Trojan myths, drawing parallels between the Trojan warriors and the Australian soldiers at Gallipoli. There's a lot of works where the soldiers are in battle. They're naked, as you'd see in a lot of artworks from the early Greek and Trojan periods. He was also influenced by myths and poetry.
We care not what old Homer tells of Trojan war and Helen's fame. Upon the ancient Dardanelles new peoples write, in blood, their name.
Nolan has donated his drawings and paintings on the theme of war to the nation. There are hundreds on show in a system of regular rotation. They're called Nolan's Gallipoli series and remind the country of her great loss and deep grief in both world wars.
The gift of the 252 works by Sidney Nolan to the Australian War Memorial in 1978 was extremely important. He donated it in memory of his brother Raymond, who passed away at the end of the Second World War in a tragic accident.
The panel at the back of me there is really based on the landing at Gallipoli, which I've used Dante's Inferno as a reference, and I've tried to build the thing up into the extraordinary turmoil it must have been, and it has in it a kind of portrait of my young brother and an image of my father trying to take him out of the water, being wounded, and he died during the war, my young brother, and upset my father all his life, and so it's a very sombre painting, and it was meant to be the centrepiece of these Gallipoli paintings.
It really is an important collection for the Australian War Memorial. It gives a different view of Gallipoli than the traditional war paintings that most people are used to, so the George Lamberts or the Horace Moore-Jones. Nolan is like a bowbird. He thinks about the whole idea of the myth and the legend of Anzac. He researches it, he reads, he would look through the Anzac book. The Anzac book was